Last night was my first in the new apartment. I was excited yet nervous. The vintage charm was nice, but I hadn't fully adjusted to living alone. The creaky floors gave me an odd mix of comfort and unease. I was working late on a project when I heard noises above me. At first, I thought it was my upstairs neighbor. Boxes moving or something. But the banging didn't stop. It got worse. Sharp thuds echoing in the stillness of my apartment. I turned up my music, hoping it would drown out the sounds. But they only seemed to grow louder, creeping closer. I squirmed in my chair, pretending I was just tired. But my skin prickled with something I couldn't name. I tried to ignore it. I walked over to the window, hoping to distract myself. The street outside was quiet. Dim streetlights illuminated a few scattered folks enjoying the night. I doubted my fears, but the unsettling silence still felt heavy. Then, I noticed a shadow zip by my window. My heart jumped. I turned quickly but saw only the empty street. I shook my head, blaming tiredness for my jumpy imagination. I wanted to focus on work, but I kept glancing back at the window. Shadows danced in the corner of my vision. As the night wore on, the bangs turned into a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. It matched the quickening of my pulse. I couldn't ignore it any longer. The uneasy feeling had lodged itself in my stomach. I swallowed hard. Each glance over my shoulder revealed nothing but the empty room. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to breathe. I told myself nothing was there. But deep down, I felt that familiar sensation of being watched. I turned back to my computer, but my focus was gone. I walked back to the window, peering outside again. This time, I saw another shadow, a vague shape lingering. Felt wrong. My heart raced as I blinked. And there it went. Just like before. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or terrified. Something was off. But I decided I had to confront it. I stood up and opened the door. The hallway was quiet, but the feeling of dread hung around me. I could feel it crawling up my back. Just as I was about to return to my apartment, a low voice whispered my name. Emily. I froze. It was so soft, almost friendly. I turned around, but there was nobody there. The air felt thick, oppressive. I stood at the threshold, caught between fear and curiosity. Then the voice came again, clearer now. Why haven't you let me in? I shot back into my apartment, closing the door tight. My breath came fast, and my mind raced. I didn't know what was happening, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me just outside. Just as I thought I should call for help, the knocking returned. Louder this time, 3 heavy thuds, echoing as if right behind me. I held my breath. I stood there, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The knocking felt alive, as if something wanted to break through. Each thud echoed in my ears, a countdown. I glanced at the door, half expecting it to burst open. Just a neighbor, I whispered to myself, trying to push down the fear swelling up. But the shadows from the window flickered again, pulling my gaze. I didn't want to look closer, but something compelled me. Tentatively, I moved back toward the window. The street outside offered no comfort, a stillness where shadows played tricks on my eyes. I drew the curtain back slightly, peering out. Nothing. Then a movement on the fire escape caught my eye. I squinted, hoping to calm myself. A figure shifted between the bars, barely visible, a long coat fluttering in the breeze. My breath hitched. Time felt like it slowed. "Who are you?" I mumbled, though I knew they couldn't hear me. The figure seemed to lean toward my window, its form blurring with the shadows. Panic surged as I thought about my phone. Should I call someone? The knocking returned, more insistent now. I stumbled back from the window, clutching my phone like a lifeline. But I didn't want to alert whatever was out there. What if they heard me? Suddenly, I remembered my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson from 2 doors down. She had a reputation for being nosy, but I needed help. I moved to my door, fingertips grazing the cool handle. I hesitated, listening for another voice or shadow. Then I steeled myself. Maybe I could just momentarily find out if she knew anything. I opened the door a crack. The hallway stretched out dark and empty, the air thick with an uncertain chill. I peeked toward her apartment, but the door was tightly shut. "Mrs. Thompson?" I whispered, hoping she might hear. Silence answered, but the knocking continued, now a furious rapping on my door. I barely dared breathe. My thoughts rushed to the voice. "Why haven't you let me in?" It echoed in my mind, taunting. I pressed my back against the wall, heart racing. Maybe I should just ignore it. Perhaps it would go away on its own. Just then, my phone buzzed loudly in the quiet, jolting me. I fumbled to grab it, clutching the screen tightly. A digital message lit up. "Are you all right?" It was from Lucy, my best friend. I typed back fast, "No. Something is wrong here. Please call me." Before I could even hit send, the door rattled violently. My breath caught in my throat as the knob began to turn. Panic surged as I realized someone was trying to get in. I barely had time to react when the door slammed against the wall, the hinges screeching in protest. I spun to face the darkness behind me, ready to confront whatever it was. And that S when I saw it, a shadow stepping over the threshold, its eyes glimmering in the faint light. I felt frozen, heart racing. I should have run, but I couldn't move. Took a step forward. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. I was lying on the floor, disoriented and confused. The room was still dark, and the weight of the silence pressed against me like a heavy blanket. The last thing I remembered was the figure stepping into my apartment. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline coursing through me. Instinctively, I reached for my phone, but it was gone. Panic set in as I frantically searched around me, my fingers brushing against the cool surface of the coffee table, the cold floor beneath my feet. "Where is it?" I muttered under my breath. I needed that light, that reassurance. Then I heard it, a soft sound, almost like a whisper, drifting through the air. "Let me in." The words floated toward me, chilling my skin. I peered around the room, my breath quickening. The darkness felt alive, alive with possibilities. I remembered the door, still wide open. I crept toward it, careful to make no noise. The faint glimmer of moonlight spilled into the room, and I edged closer, hoping to see something, anything that would help me understand what was happening. The hallway was empty, stretched out like a black void. But I didn't hear another sound. No footsteps, no rustling. I took a deep breath and stepped into the hall. Felt eerie, like stepping into someone else's nightmare. I called out softly, "Hello? Is anyone there?" Silence wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. But then, from the depths of the hall, I heard a different sound, a low chuckle, echoing softly and rolling like thunder. I froze. It was the same voice that had whispered before. I felt my stomach drop. A decision loomed before me. I could rush back into my apartment and slam the door shut, but I couldn't go back. Not now. Not when I felt like I was being watched. I pressed onward, following the sound. As I made my way down the corridor, a door creaked open slowly, almost invitingly. Mrs. Thompson's door. The nosy old woman had always kept her door ajar, but now it felt like an invitation into a dark world. I peered inside, expecting to see her watching TV, her nose buried in a book, anything to make this feel normal again. Instead, I found nothing. The room was dark, the only light filtering through the window, throwing jagged shadows across the empty furniture. A chill crept up my spine. "Mrs. Thompson?" I called, my voice quivering. No answer. Just the hum of silence and that same low chuckle drifting in the air. Closer now. I turned to leave, and that S when I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. They were slow, deliberate. My blood turned to ice as I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest. I found myself face to face with a figure standing in the hallway. I could see the glint of their eyes. There was a familiarity to it, but I couldn't place it. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but it was too late. "Why haven't you let me in?" Their voice was haunting, sending ripples of dread through me. Suddenly, lights flickered on in the hallway, revealing the figure in a stark light, and for a fleeting second, it all made sense. But then the lights flickered off, plunging me back into darkness, and I felt a cold hand on my shoulder. I gasped, my body reacting before my mind could catch up. I jerked away, spinning around to face whatever had touched me. My heart raced in the unbearable silence. The chill from the hand lingered on my skin like an unwanted memory. I squinted into the darkness, searching for the figure, my breath hitching as shadows danced around the edges of the hallway. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. But that voice, that disembodied whisper still echoed in my ears. "Why haven't you let me in?" The air around me felt thick, pressing down like a weight I couldn't shake. What did it want? Why did it call to me? Fear clawed through my mind, but curiosity pulled me back toward the glowing light that had flickered on just moments ago. I needed answers. I stepped back, my feet hesitant, passing the threshold into the hallway again. I strained my eyes, hoping to catch a glimpse of the figure, desperate for a sign that I hadn't completely lost touch with reality. Suddenly, I heard a different sound, a soft scuttling noise, like something small darting across the floor. I peered toward the sound, my heart pounding as I imagined shadows shifting beneath the staircase. Just a mouse, I told myself. Just a mouse. But then I heard it again, louder this time, closer. I took a step back, ready to bolt if necessary, when the lights flickered on again. This time they stayed lit. I blinked, my breath quickened as I squinted. The hallway was clear, but my stomach twisted. There, in the corner of my eye, I spotted something glimmering near Mrs. Thompson's door. My body screamed at me to turn and run, but I found myself moving toward the door instead, curiosity overpowering my fear. I knelt down, heart racing, and reached for the glimmering object. It was an old key, its metal cool against my fingertips. I turned it over, examining it under the light. There was something familiar about it, but I couldn't place what. As I stood, a loud crash echoed through the apartment. Came from the living room. I froze, gripped by fear as my thoughts raced. I couldn't ignore it. Someone or something was in my home. I glanced back down the hall, weighing my options. The key felt like a lifeline, but I couldn't see how it would help me now. The noise repeated, a violent shatter piercing through the stillness, compelling me forward. Fighting against the urge to flee, I crept toward the living room, my heart pounding in rhythm with my racing thoughts. I could feel the air buzzing around me, each step a reminder of the danger lurking. When I reached the doorway, I peeked around the corner. The scene shocked me. My furniture was overturned, and the window was wide open, swaying in the night breeze. I could barely breathe as I processed what I saw. And then I heard that same whisper again, closer now. Let me in. Panic surged through me. I needed to get out, to escape whatever was happening. My gaze landed back on the key, still in my hand. I had to make a choice, but before I could decide, a figure stepped out from the shadows behind me. "Why didn't you let me in?" I spun around, ready to face my fate. I hardly had time to scream before the figure lunged forward. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the edge of a coffee table. I fell hard. The breath knocked from me as I hit the floor. The figure loomed above me, features obscured by the dim light. It was tall, slender, and moved with an unnerving fluidity. "You don't have to be afraid," it said, but the voice was chilling like ice rattling in my ears. I scrambled backward, fumbling for anything that could defend me. My hand brushed against the key I had found. I tightened my grip, unsure what I might do with it. I could feel my heart drumming like a prisoner wanting to escape. "Why are you here?" I managed to croak, voice trembling. "You have to let me in," the figure whispered again, stepping closer. I could now see its eyes, dark and deep like voids that swallowed the light. "Let you in?" I blurted, "What do you mean?" I felt trapped, the walls of my living room closing in on me. "It's not safe for you. You need to trust me." A hand reached out, almost pleadingly. Panic ignited inside me. Trust this thing? It had invaded my space. It had shattered my world. I stood quickly to put distance between us, pressing myself against the wall, the key clutched tightly in my palm. Then I noticed it rumbling from the depths of the living room, an unsettling sound like low growling, growing louder with each passing moment. My gaze shot to the open window. The wind was howling, but this was different. Whatever was in my home now had company. Please, the figure urged, eyes flickering with intensity. If they find you here, you won't be safe. You need to let me help you. I had to think fast. The growling morphed into something more sinister, almost like a warning. The shadows in the corners of the room thickened, swirling like a storm. Couldn't he breathe? Then everything shifted. A piercing scream echoed off the walls, a voice not my own. I whipped around to look for the source, but the living room was still. The figure's gaze was focused behind me, fear etched into its features. What was that? I shouted. The growling had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence that filled the air. It's too late. The figure whispered, its face pale. They're coming. I turned back toward the living room, trying to figure out what to do next. I felt the pulse of fear rush through me as I glanced at the window. That whisper in my ear from long before returned. Let me in suddenly. Something heavy thudded against the door, shaking the frame. I let out a shallow gasp. This was no longer just fear. This was survival. Then, as if on cue, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed every corner of the room, and the only sound was the relentless pounding of my heart. I needed to decide right now. Would I take a risk and try to let the figure in, or would I make a run for it before whatever lurked beyond the door broke through? Just as I reached a decision, the doorknob rattled violently, and the darkness whispered again. This time it was not just asking. It was demanding. The doorknob rattled again, more fiercely this time, as if something were clawing to get through. I pressed my back against the wall, feeling the cool paint against my skin. The figure in front of me had taken a half-step back, its eyes wide with apprehension. Listen to me, it insisted, its voice low but urgent. You need to make a choice. I can help you, but you have to trust me. Before I could respond, another thud reverberated through the apartment. Came from behind the door, the sound heavy and threatening. My heart raced. I was trapped, alone with whatever was trying to break in. I glanced at the figure, weighing my options. Could I really trust this thing? But then again, what was beyond that door? The pounding came again, this time accompanied by a low, grating sound that made my skin crawl. Please, the figure said, moving slightly closer. They're coming for you. I can protect you, but you have to let me in. The shadows flickered oddly across the walls, seeming to shift and twist. I noticed for the first time that they weren't just shadows. They were dark shapes forming and dissolving, hungry and relentless. Fear pierced through me, and I realized I was running out of time. They can't come through if I'm inside, the figure pressed. They seek you. You're the target. Let me in and I'll shield you. A scream erupted from outside, piercing through the tension. It was so close, echoing down the hall, and for a brief moment, I felt a chill wrap around my spine. Was it coming from someone in danger, or was it a trap to lure me? I can't let you in, I whispered, shaking my head. Not yet. I need to know what's happening first. The figure's features darkened, its voice dropping to a whisper. If you don't trust me, you will regret it. These are not mere shadows, and you don't want to face them alone. I looked toward the door again, my mind racing. The noises intensified, the growling returned, and the floor trembled underfoot as another thud landed against the door. I felt each sound reverberate through my bones. It was coming for me. I turned back to the figure, desperate. What should I do? There was a flicker of something in its eyes, a mix of anger and urgency. Take a chance. Use the key. The strange key felt surprisingly heavy in my palm. Its metallic edge glinted in the darkness, almost mocking me. What will it do? I asked. It will seal the darkness out. But only if you believe, the figure replied, almost pleadingly. Before I could think it through, another heavy crash shook the door. I hesitated, heart pounding like a drum. Trust that figure or the unknown outside. In that moment of indecision, the shadows lunged, suddenly racing toward me, their forms twisting as they reached for anything they could grasp. Now, the figure yelled. I just had to make a choice. I rushed towards the door with the key in hand. Would it lock them out or draw them in? I didn't know, but I had no time left. When I heard it, a whisper that sent chills through me. Don't let it in. As I stood there with the key clutched tightly in my hand, the shadows lunged closer. They swirled, tendrils of darkness reaching for me like claws. My instincts screamed for me to act. I slammed the key into the lock and twisted. The moment the key turned, a blinding light erupted from the lock, cutting through the shadows like a knife. For a heartbeat, everything stopped. The heavy thuds beyond the door halted, replaced by an eerie silence. I felt the warmth of the light wrapping around me, pushing against the chilling darkness. Then, the figure rushed forward, squeezing through the doorframe. I stumbled back, startled. "You did it," it exclaimed, urgency flooding its voice. "Now we can hold them off." "Hold what off?" I asked, my voice shaky. I caught a glimpse of the shadows recoiling outside, hissing at the light but undeterred. They began to swirl back into shape, pressing against the door like a beast trying to squeeze through a narrow space. "They want you," the figure said, urgency etched in its features. "They want your essence, your fear. That's how they thrive." "What do you mean, my essence?" I felt my heart race again. This couldn't be real. Just hours ago I was in my own world. Now I was wrapped up in something dark and twisted. "Just listen," it urged. "They feed on panic. If you lose control, they'll break through. You have to stay calm and remember why you're fighting." Just then, the door shook violently as something hit it with a bone-jarring force. A crack formed in the wood, splintering like an ice sheet shattering under pressure. I gasped, a wave of fear crashing over me. I couldn't think straight. I wanted to scream, to run, but all I could do was cling to the key. "Stay focused," the figure shouted, and it seemed to pulse with energy, glowing faintly. "You have the power to keep them out. Use it." I glanced at the door, panic rising again as the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices, beckoning me, taunting me with promises. "Let us in," they crooned. "We offer freedom from fear." I shook my head violently, forcing the words away. "No, I won't let you in. Don't just say it, believe it." The figure insisted, its form flickering as if the shadows were trying to pull it apart. "You must stand strong." I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the key in my palm. I remembered my life before this chaos. I remembered the things that mattered: friends, family, laughter. I focused on those thoughts, pushing away the creeping dark. With newfound resolve, I stepped forward, raising the key between us and the door. "You won't take me," I shouted, feeling the power surge as the light flared brighter. Suddenly, the whispers turned to howls of rage. The shadows recoiled as the glow intensified, forcing back their advance. But in the back of my mind, a nagging doubt lingered. What exactly was this figure I had let in? When I noticed something strange. A shadow detached itself from the main mass, creeping quietly along the edges of the door, sneaking into the room. I felt a jolt of fear. Someone or something was slipping inside. The shadow slithered through the doorway, moving with a grace that both captivated and terrified me. It wasn't like the chaotic mass pressing against the door. This was sleek, deliberate. I backed away, instinct kicking in. "Watch out," the figure next to me yelled, its voice rising with panic. "It's trying to poison your mind." "Poison?" I stammered, eyes locked on the encroaching darkness. "Yes. It will whisper your fears and make them feel real." I clenched the key harder, feeling the warmth from its surface. But uncertainty gnawed at me. How could I believe the figure when shadows were already creeping into my space? "No," I shouted, shaking my head violently. I forced myself to focus, to see the things that made me strong. My friends, moments of joy, laughter. But as I thought of these things, the shadow twisted, reshaping itself like a living canvas, morphing into images of my past failures, faces of people I'd lost, each one a dagger to my heart. "Don't look," the figure urged, but my eyes were glued to the darkness. It began to vibrate, each pulse syncing with the thrum of my anxiety. It felt like a twisted parade of my worst memories playing out before me. "Just breathe," it said, glancing at me with desperation. "This isn't real. They thrive on your fear." "But it looks so real," I whispered, backing away further. I could feel the heat of the light flickering behind me, but I was increasingly drawn to the shadow-esque whispers. What if I don't know what's real anymore? Push it away, the figure shouted. Concentrate. Remember what you hold dear. I took a quick breath, fighting the mental noise. My family, my true friends. I had to cling to those thoughts. I raised the key once more, the glow flickering in response, but the shadow pressed in closer. The whispers turned to 1,000 voices. You don't deserve peace, they taunted. You're just fooling yourself. You have no real power. No one to fight for you. The cracks in the door expanded, and I braced myself as the figure flickered again, its form shimmering dangerously. We can't hold them off forever. You have to fight back. With a rush, I shouted, I am not afraid of you. I thrust the key towards the shadow, feeling the light surge ahead of me. It bloomed, pushing back the encroaching darkness, crushing the whispers that echoed through the air. But the shadow didn't vanish. Instead, it shrieked in rage, its form twisting, contorting with a darkness that seemed almost human. I stumbled back again, realizing this might be no ordinary foe. Suddenly, as the light grew brighter, a flash of dread sank deep into my bones. What if you're wrong? I whispered. What if I can't do this? That was when the figure grabbed my wrist firmly, locking eyes with me. You can. We all have the strength to dim the darkness. Don't give in. But it was too late. Just as the key's light flared with desperate intensity, the shape lunged forward, breaking through the barrier like an animal released from its cage. The room filled with a consuming darkness, and I felt my resolve waver. And then, everything went dark. I woke up gasping, heart racing. The darkness pressed in around me, thick and choking. It felt alive, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. My fingers trembled, still clutching the key, its warmth now a distant memory. Where was the figure? I searched the shadows, but they swallowed everything. A low hum buzzed in my ears, unsettling and persistent, as if the world had turned upside down. I blinked, forcing my eyes to adjust. I was back in my apartment, sprawled on the cold floor. Panic washed over me. Had it all been a dream? Slowly, I pulled myself up, breathing heavy. My pulse raced, pounding in my ears with each step I took towards the window. Outside, the streetlight flickered erratically. My reflection stared back at me, a ghostly image in the glass. I looked different now, haunted, desperate. I needed to know if the darkness still lingered within the confines of my mind. Just as I turned to scan the room, I heard an odd sound. A soft, scratching noise, like nails on wood, came from the direction of the closet. My chest tightened. I didn't want to investigate, but that sound was insistent. Hello? I called out, my voice quivering. Nothing answered but silence, heavy and oppressive. I edged closer, heart hammering in my throat. The scratching continued, sharp and rhythmic. I reached for the doorknob, but my hand faltered. What if it was the shadow? What if it had followed me home? My instincts screamed for me to run, but curiosity held me hostage. Just as I gathered the courage to turn the knob, I heard a second sound, a low growl. It echoed through the apartment, sending chills racing down my spine. The growl was deep and ominous, vibrating within me. Something didn't want me to open that door. But I had to know. I twisted the knob and flung the door open. Darkness enveloped the closet's interior. But in that moment of exposure, I spotted something odd, a glimmer of light reflecting off something metallic. My breath caught in my throat. That S when I saw it. A small, delicate box sat at the back of the closet, half buried underneath old clothes. It wasn't just any box. It looked ancient, etched with unfamiliar symbols. The growling intensified, now mixed with a frantic rustling. I hesitated, staring into the darkness. Was it worth it? I felt the weight of the key in my pocket. It pulsed lightly, almost as if it were urging me forward. With shaky fingers, I reached for the box, heart racing faster. The growling stopped. I barely processed the silence before a force slammed against me, pushing me back. I stumbled, and my breath left me. I fell onto the floor, the box slipping from my hands and flipping open. The room pulsed with a blinding light as dark tendrils shot out, wrapping around my wrists. The shadows were back. I screamed, yanking at the bindings. I could feel the cold touch of fear creeping back in, settling like fog in my mind. Just when I thought all hope was lost, an image flashed before me, a sight of my friends laughing, of warmth and safety. I had to remember those moments. I couldn't let the shadows pull me under again. With everything I had, I fought against the darkness. And then, a loud crash echoed through the apartment. Someone was in the house. I bolted upright, adrenaline flooding my system. The shadows pulled away momentarily, as if the sound had startled them. Heart racing, I caught my breath and glanced toward the source of the crash, my living room. The box lay open on the floor, dark tendrils still curling around my wrists. I couldn't process what was happening. A mix of fear and disbelief washed over me. I had faced off against the shadows before, but never had I felt so trapped. Taking a deep breath, I summoned my willpower, focusing on the warmth of the key still tucked in my pocket. I closed my eyes. I had to believe I could break free if I let panic envelop me. This time I might not survive. I yanked at the bindings and poured my hope into the key, feeling its energy surge in response. "Get back," I shouted. "I won't let you take me." This time, the light from the key flared brighter, illuminating the room. The shadows recoiled violently, their inky forms flickering. I felt the grip on my wrists begin to loosen. But the force behind the door was relentless. A heavy pounding echoed through the apartment. The door burst open, and in rushed Lucy, eyes wide with horror. She took a breath to shout, but it was too late. The shadows surged forward like dark waves, hungry and eager. "Lucy, get out," I screamed. But it was as if the shadows had a mind of their own. They swirled around her, wrapping her in darkness. "No," I lunged, my heart constricting as I watched helplessly. Lucy began to scream, terrified. "Emily, help me." I pushed through the fear and reached for the key. Raw energy pulsed through my fingertips, exploding in waves of light, and I hurled it towards her. "Lucy, grab the key," I shouted, desperate for her to understand. She flailed against the bound darkness, wide-eyed, but when the light hit her, it shattered the shadows momentarily. "Get it. Trust me," I called again as the shadows began to recoil. Finally, Lucia's hand shot out, grasping the key. The moment her fingers wrapped around it, a blinding light erupted from her. The darkness shrieked as it was driven back, wailing like a terrible wind. The pulse of light spread through the room in waves, pushing back the shadows until they were mere wisps, retreating to the corners of the space where they could no longer hold. "Emily!" Lucy shouted, the energy suffusing her with renewed strength. "Are you okay?" "I think so," I gasped, trembling all over. The remnants of shadows lurked at the edges of my mind, but now I felt a surge of clarity. "But we need to get out of here. This place isn't safe." Just as we turned to escape, another figure emerged from the gloom. I froze as it stepped into the light, uncertainty flooding me once more. The figure looked like the one I had encountered before, eerily familiar but distorted. Its eyes glimmered with a strange mix of attraction and malice. "Together, you can't fight me off forever," it crooned, voice low and haunting. "The shadows always return." I shuddered at the weight of its words. "You're wrong. We'll fight," I shot back. Before the figure could respond, I felt Lucy's hand wrap around mine, warmth igniting between us. The light from the key flared once more, bathing the room in an ethereal glow. I pushed my fear aside, focusing on our bond, the trust and belief that we could stand against this together. As the darkness coiled to strike once more, I concentrated, channeling every ounce of hope into the warmth in my hand and shooting it towards the figure. The force of our combined will crashed against the figure, sending it reeling back. The shadows writhed, shrieking in pain as they began to dissipate. The room erupted into blinding light, flooding the corners. I felt the pull of shadows growing closer together, while the tendrils unraveled like a frayed ribbon of darkness. Lucy and I stood side by side, hearts pounding, fighting against the night. It was almost a dance, a clash of light against dark. The figure screeched once more, and then, all at once, it shattered into thousands of tiny shards, evaporating along with the shadows around us. Panting, we stood together in the aftermath, the glow slowly fading. The room felt weighted, but the oppressive haze had lifted. For the first time, I realized that the oppressive anxiety weighing on me was gone. I felt lighter, freer, as if I had shed a skin I didn't know I was wearing. Did we win? Lucy asked, glancing around the room as if it could answer her. I think so, I replied, unsure but hopeful. But I know they won. Be gone forever. We made our way to the door, and as I stepped outside, the cool night air felt refreshing against my skin. It was liberating to escape that darkness. But even as I breathed in the freedom, I knew the darkness would always linger somewhere, waiting for its moment. I looked at Lucy, who met my gaze, her eyes reflecting a kaleidoscope of emotions: fear, resilience, and an unspoken understanding. No matter what happens, I said, we'll face it together. Lucy nodded, and we stepped into the night, leaving the shadows behind us for now. But deep down, I still wondered, was it the end, or merely a quiet before a greater storm? As I glanced back at the darkened doorway to my old life, I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows hadn't found their last refuge yet, and perhaps we'd have to confront them again someday. But for now, I was filled with a strange hope. Maybe this was just the beginning.